I am Brandon, 20 years old, a sophomore psychology major at a public university in the western United States. When recounting this story, I can still smell the old wood of the dormitory hallway and the humming of the vending machine at night. Room 203, the corner room with a window overlooking the maple trees, has become the center of everything I once thought I could hide. It was where Kevin entered my life, light as a breeze, and stayed like a secret that made my heart both warm and afraid. I met Kevin at the beginning of the fall semester. He moved into room 203 with a silver suitcase and a guitar covered in stickers. He was from Iowa, tall and lanky, with messy brown hair that always looked like he just stepped out of the wind, and a smile that could soften even the worst day. I was used to my own quietness, but Kevin's arrival was like turning on a light in a dark room. Everything became clearer, including the deep things I'd never dared to name. We started with the ordinary things. Borrowing scissors, sharing cheap pizza, complaining about 8 a.m. classes. Then longer conversations emerged. From schoolwork to family. From fears of failure to vague questions about who am I. One night, as the city sank into cold fog, Kevin suddenly said, "Have you ever felt like you're playing a role?" I nodded without daring to look into his eyes. In the dorm, the walls were thin as paper. But between me and Kevin, a private silence formed, where two guys sat under the dim desk lamp, saying things no one else could hear. I noticed my heartbeat change every time he lightly touched my shoulder to call my name. Brandon. The way he pronounced it made my name feel like a promise. We had an unspoken agreement. What happened in room 203 stayed there. The secret grew as Kevin played me the half-written songs he'd composed. The lyrics were full of gaps like us, lingering with the desire to be ourselves without fearing anyone else's gaze. One rainy evening, pounding against the window glass, Kevin handed me the headphones and whispered, "I wrote this when I felt lost." I wanted to say that I was lost too, right in his eyes, but I stayed silent. At school, we were just two awkward roommates with stacks of paper cups and books piled on top of each other. In room 203, the distance shrank. Once during a power outage, the entire hallway went dark, and we sat close on the floor, light from the phone casting shadows on Kevin's face. He talked about the pressure from his dad, who always wanted him to be a model man. I listened and placed my hand on his. Kevin flinched slightly, then didn't pull away. It wasn't a casual handhold. It was a silent answer. The days after, we still joked like two normal guys, fighting over the remote, arguing about favorite teams, waking each other up when we were about to be late for class. But every accidental touch became meaningful. I memorized small details. The calluses on Kevin's fingers from the guitar, the way he bit his lip when thinking. I feared someone seeing what was growing between us, and feared myself if I pretended it didn't exist. The secret in room 203 wasn't an explosive event. It was a process, layers of walls peeled away. One late night, surrounded by deadlines, Kevin lay staring at the ceiling and asked, "If one day you liked someone like you, what would you do?" I swallowed hard. "I think I'd tell the truth, but I'd be scared too." Kevin nodded. "Me too." In that moment, I understood that our secret wasn't just the handhold or the lingering glances. It was two American guys, in a noisy university, still finding it hard to admit what made their hearts race. Room 203 became a sanctuary but also a mirror forcing us to look straight at ourselves. I don't know how this story will end. I only know that fall, the maple leaves turned red like ink stains on the campus lawn, and I, Brandon, took a small step I couldn't turn back from. And Kevin, with his guitar and eyes hiding something, gave me the first secret. He wasn't alone in his fear, and neither was I. After the first week of the semester, college life swept us away at the speed of emails and group assignments. I was busy with applied statistics class, Kevin with rehearsals for the acoustic show at the campus coffee shop. But no matter how long the days were, we always returned to room 203 like to a parallel world. The hallway lights were still golden like honey, the carpet still smelled of cheap laundry detergent, and in that cramped space, what was growing was no longer coincidence. One Friday night, the dorm was chaotic with music from downstairs. Someone was throwing a birthday party. Kevin sat on the edge of the bed, lacing his shoes, asking if I wanted to go. I didn't like parties, but the excitement in his eyes pulled me up. The minibar was set up with 2 folding tables, green and red LED lights, the smell of cheap beer mixed with perfume. Friends surrounded Kevin when he grabbed the guitar, cheers like waves. I stood in the back, half happy for him, half feeling my heart tighten with the simple thought, I had no right to him. After the song, a girl from Kevin's class leaned close to his shoulder and asked, "Are you dating anyone yet?" Kevin laughed, shook his head, casually replying that he was focusing on music. I saw his quick blink, as if he'd chosen his words carefully to avoid revealing something. I left the party early, standing on the 3rd floor balcony, cold wind slicing my cheeks. A few minutes later, Kevin stepped beside me, saying nothing. We leaned on the railing, looking at the distant stadium lights. "Thanks for being there," he whispered. I replied, "I'm always here." In the days after, the secret took shape. Late-night texts with just a few words, "You still up?" Walks around the lake after class, sometimes silent but still enough. Kevin said he'd thought leaving his home state would make everything easier, but it turned out the hardest part was saying it out loud. I talked about the times I'd pretended not to know what I wanted, choosing safety over honesty. We didn't name it, but we both knew what we were talking about. One afternoon of pouring rain, the football game canceled, the campus empty like a movie set. Kevin's phone rang, his mom calling. I accidentally heard a few sentences, her voice gentle then hardening when mentioning his dad, expectations, phrases like, "Don't cause more trouble." Kevin hung up, leaned against the window, his shoulders trembling slightly. I stepped over, draped a hoodie over him. He turned, eyes glistening but no tears falling, and I saw clearly what we'd been holding back. "Brandon." He called my name like half a confession. But right then, a knock sounded, the RA on routine room check. Kevin stepped back. We hurriedly cleared ramen packets and soda cans like 2 normal students. The secret closed behind forced laughter. I started to feel jealous in small ways. When a guy from philosophy class invited Kevin to the gym, my stomach knotted even though there was no real reason. I hid the jealousy under dry jokes, while Kevin sometimes looked at me longer than usual, as if asking why. We orbited each other, paths getting closer, but not touching the word we both feared, love. In a rare quiet evening, rain tapping the roof, another power outage hit. The whole building plunged into the dark blue of lingering twilight. Kevin lit leftover birthday candles from the drawer, the flame casting gentle, distorted shapes on the walls. We sat facing each other on the floor, the distance only the length of a textbook. He said, "I'm not sure I'm brave enough to live truthfully." I answered more honestly than ever, "I'm not sure I'm brave enough to keep hiding." The moment between those sentences stretched until I could hear my own heartbeat. Kevin leaned in, not quite advancing, not quite retreating, just closer. I saw the curve of his hesitant smile on his lips, felt the warmth radiating from his hand next to mine. But then the lights flickered back on, cheers from students in the hallway pulling us back to reality. We laughed like we'd just avoided something dangerous, which was actually what we both craved. From that day, there was a new layer of silence between us, thicker but not cold. We knew we'd reached the edge. The secret of room 203 was no longer just a handhold in the dark. It became a hanging question. Would we dare take the final step? Every time I locked the door, the soft click sounded like a countdown timer. One late night, when Kevin dozed off at the desk with an open textbook, I watched him for a long time. I thought about what would happen if someone knew. Friends, the band, family, circles that could close or shatter. But I also knew I was in the right place where my life began to change. Room 203, window overlooking wet leaves, and the boy who made me stop fearing myself. I gently touched the edge of Kevin's notebook, where he'd written half a song lyric unfinished. "There's a room where we can breathe. There's a room where we can breathe." I smiled, knowing he was talking about this place and, perhaps, about us. The secret hadn't been spoken yet, but it had its own breath. And once alive, it would demand to be named. Winter arrived in a very American way. Noisy heaters, hot coffee in paper cups, and hoodies big enough to hide the whole world inside. The first snow fell lightly on the campus lawn, blanketing the steps we usually rushed over. Kevin and I walked side by side, boots crunching, breaths turning to mist. From the outside, we were just two normal roommates. Inside, the secret grew like warmth seeping into sleeves. Kevin smiled less lately. He spent more time in the music department's practice room, rehearsing an unnamed song over and over. I'd see him return late, cold clinging to his coat collar, rubbing his hands red. We'd share a quick ramen box, watch sports channels neither really paid attention to. There were silences that weren't heavy, just full of unsaid things. One Tuesday night, he set the guitar down and said without beating around the bush, "Brandon, I think I need to tell you something." I felt my heart shift places. The desk lamp created a small halo like a stage just for us. Kevin continued slowly, "I'm not the model everyone wants, and I'm tired of pretending." That seemingly vague sentence was like a key unlocking the door we'd been avoiding. I replied, voice lower than intended, "Me too." We looked at each other, no more dodging. It felt like standing on a cliff over the sea, wind whipping, both scary and freeing. Kevin closed his eyes for a very brief moment, then chuckled softly. "If this is the time we admit what we're thinking, then I'm thinking about you." I had no place to hide. I said truthfully, for the first time completely unguarded, "I'm thinking about you too, more than I planned." No background music, no fireworks. Just room 203, cluttered with books, smelling of cheap laundry detergent, and two guys trembling from a truth finally spoken. We didn't need to hug or do anything grand. Being acknowledged was enough to light up the room in a strange way. Kevin whispered, "So, this is our secret." I nodded. "Yes, and it's real." The next day, the world kept spinning. Calculus class still hard to swallow, the library still too cold, the Starbucks line still long. But in the crowd, every time Kevin's shoulder brushed mine, I no longer had to pretend it was accidental. We learned to exchange small moments outsiders couldn't read. A smile lingering an extra beat, a morning greeting warmer than usual. Love, it turned out, wasn't noisy. It was like falling snow, silent but impossible to ignore. But not everything was gentle. One afternoon, Kevin returned with a tense face. His dad had called. I only heard scattered sentences. "Proper standards. Don't worry your mom. A man has to be like that." Phone off, room 203 felt smaller than ever. Kevin sat on the floor, back against the bed, eyes distant. I sat beside him, close enough for warmth to spread. "If they knew," he started, then trailed off. I squeezed his hand lightly. "We don't need all the answers tonight." Kevin leaned his head on my shoulder, saying nothing. I heard our hearts blending, and I understood. Courage isn't always shouting the truth. Sometimes it's just continuing to breathe. A small rumor started spreading in the dorm hallway. "You two in room 203 are pretty close, huh?" It was said jokingly, then with winks. I wasn't sure who started it. We hadn't done anything wrong, but my stomach still nodded. In class, I noticed a few lingering looks. Kevin pretended not to notice, but that night, he opened the window despite the cold, taking a deep breath. "I hate having to be afraid," he said. I replied, "I don't want to lose you just because of the world's fear." The words came out before I could think. Kevin turned, a sad but determined smile. "You won't lose me. Not here." Then came the acoustic performance at the small coffee shop outside the campus gate, where Kevin told me he had something to try. Golden lights, cinnamon scent, clinking spoons on cups. Kevin took the stage with his familiar guitar. He glanced at me for a very short second, enough to shrink the world to a point. The new song played, no names mentioned, no direct words, but every line seemed written for room 203 and the person in the third row. "There's a room where I don't hide, and someone who says my name like home." I held my breath. No one knew, but I did. That night, snow thick enough to muffle footsteps. We returned to the dorm, silent until the door closed. Kevin set the guitar down, looking at me like he wanted to confirm this wasn't a dream. "Brandon," he said slowly, I like you. Not vaguely anymore. I replied, not trembling as I'd imagined. I like you too. Clearly. No backing down. We didn't need more vows. Really, all we had was the present. Two American guys in the middle of winter college in the small room 203. But that present was full enough that I knew no matter how hard things got ahead, I wouldn't trade it. Our secret was no longer just something to hide. It became something to keep, because it was real and it was ours. Outside, wind blew down the hallway, someone laughing loudly next door. In the small room, I gently took Kevin's hand. This time, no flinching release. This time, we let it stay secure between two breaths. Once the truth was spoken aloud, things didn't magically become easier. They just became realer. We learned to exist between two worlds. Outside, we were still Brandon and Kevin, roommates, sophomores, normal guys lining up for burritos after class. Inside, in room 203, we were two people figuring out how to protect what had just begun to bloom from cold winds and judging eyes. I don't know when waiting for Kevin's texts became a habit. In the mornings, before heading to the cafeteria, he'd send exactly 3 words. Up yet? Like a small ritual. I pretend to complain, but smile like an idiot at the screen. Those little things strung together, turning into the feeling of a place to return to in a tiring day. I realized, affection doesn't have to be loud. It just needs to endure. But then reality knocked in its own way. One Thursday afternoon, as we debated pizza or ramen, the door suddenly swung open. It was Ethan, Kevin's classmate, known for being straightforward and not very tactful. He stormed in like a mini hurricane, laughed loudly, then stopped. His eyes flicked over the too-close distance between me and Kevin, our hands still intertwined, not yet pulled away. That moment stretched like the whole winter. Ethan raised an eyebrow, not saying anything right away. I felt Kevin squeeze my hand lightly before letting go. Not out of shame for me, but from ingrained self-defense. Forgot my textbook, Ethan said, voice suspiciously normal. After grabbing the book, he paused a beat, looked at us both and dropped a half-joking, half-serious line. You two are always stuck together. Door closed, the room went dead silent. Kevin exhaled, long like unloading a burden. We can't keep everything in this bubble forever, he said, voice neither sad nor happy. I nodded. I knew, but knowing didn't mean ready. I'm not ashamed of us, I said slowly. I just don't want others defining this for me yet. Kevin looked at me, eyes strangely warm. That's what I want too. Rumors don't need much evidence to grow. A lingering look, a half-finished sentence. That's enough. A few people started asking indirectly. A guy from upstairs joked, Room 203 is the sweet spot, huh? Every laugh sounded edged. That night, Kevin and I sat by the window, watching snow fall in broken white lines. If things blow up, Kevin whispered, would you regret it? I was honest. No, but I'd be scared. Kevin nodded. Me too. The event that changed everything happened on an afternoon that seemed ordinary. The school held a career workshop. I buried myself in an essay. Kevin rehearsed with the band. When I returned, the hallway was empty, just someone's wet shoes by the door. I opened it, saw Kevin on the floor, back against the bed, eyes red-rimmed. His phone in hand still lit. A message from his dad. A few short but heavy sentences, ending with don't do anything to shame the family. Kevin didn't cry loudly. He was just silent, and that silence hurt more than sobs. I sat beside him, wrapped my arms around. Kevin buried his face in my shoulder, whispering, I don't want to be anyone's mistake. My heart twisted. You're not a mistake, I said word by word, leaving no room for doubt. You're the one I stopped because some words are so big they need the right moment. I switched to whispering, you're the one I choose. That night, we didn't find solutions. We just lay side by side on the floor, jackets as pillows, listening to the heater's rattling hum. Out there, a world full of rules and expectations. In here, just two guys learning not to hate themselves. I realized that sometimes love doesn't come to fix everything. It comes to help endure hard truths without feeling alone. The next day, Kevin said he wanted to practice a new song. Not to tell everyone, he explained, but to tell myself. I sat in the corner watching him tune the strings. In the raw guitar sound, I heard myself. The wobbles, the small hopes like bedside lights at night's end. At the chorus, Kevin looked at me, smiling without trembling. There's a name I'm not afraid to say inside my chest. I knew what that name was. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid anymore. One late winter evening, the dorm held a group movie night in the common room. We sat in the back row. Amid the noisy film, Kevin lightly touched my hand in the dark. No one saw, but I didn't need witnesses. I just needed to know that in that moment we'd chosen each other, even if just a small bit of courage hidden in the shadows. The secret of room 203 was no longer just something to conceal. It became a fragile bridge leading us from fear to honesty. And I felt it clearly. A new chapter was about to open, not loudly, but unavoidably. Winter melted away like ice in a forgotten cola on the desk. Snow faded, revealing tired brown grass patches. Paths slick and wet, bikes lined up like obedient dogs waiting for owners. The school shifted to the in-between season, not quite cold, not quite warm, like exactly the state of me and Kevin, on the boundary between secret and light. One Monday morning, a notice posted by the dorm door, full floor room inspections, this week. That innocuous line made my heart skip a beat, not because of a messy room, but from the fragility of what we were holding. Kevin looked at the paper, turned to me, eyes both worried and steadfast. No matter what happens, he said, I still choose us. I didn't reply right away. I just stepped over, pressed my forehead to his in a quiet moment the world had no entry to. The days after, college life swirled as usual. Group presentations making me want to vanish, Kevin rehearsing for the spring show. But beneath all the normal, a big question lay. How far would we go with our truth? The answer came sooner than expected. On inspection day, the RA knocked 3 times, familiar voice echoing in the hall. We opened, smiling the model student way. Everything went smoothly until the RA's eyes paused on the single photo taped to the wall. A shot in the campus quad, Kevin laughing, me beside him, both sharing a scarf like a joke in the first snow. The RA looked an extra beat, smiled lightly then checked the form. All good, he said and moved on. Door just closed, Kevin and I burst out laughing. Not because it was funny, but from tension unlatched. Maybe, Kevin said, the world isn't always ready to be the villain. I nodded. Perhaps we'd blocked ourselves with the worst scenarios fear had scripted. That afternoon, Kevin suggested we walk around the lake. The water rippled with weak early spring sun, joggers passing with rhythmic shoe thuds. We were silent for a long while, a comfortable silence reserved for those who'd navigated each other's steep paths. Finally, Kevin stopped, hands in coat pockets. Brandon, he said, voice steady, I love you. No fanfare. No sparkling snow like in movies. Just a sentence dropping into the world, neat and real enough to make the ground feel stable underfoot. I took a deep breath, realizing I no longer feared that word. I love you, I replied. This time no retreat, no dodge. We didn't kiss in the park or do anything for the world to witness. We just stood beside each other a little longer, letting early spring wind slip into the gaps once fear, now relief. But life isn't a straight line. A week later, Kevin got an email from home. His dad was coming to visit the school. Just one line of notice and all our stable plans reset. That night, Kevin sat by the window long, not yet wiped of rain streaks. I don't want to hide, he said softly, but I don't want to lose them either. I listened, no rush to resolve. Loving someone doesn't make every choice easy. It means staying, even when answers haven't formed. The day he arrived, the sky gray like blank paper. I met him at the eatery near campus. Shaking his hand, I felt the familiar grip of men who live by rigid definitions. He asked about classes, rooming together. No extra words, no deep ones. But in his eyes, something recognized yet unnamed. That afternoon, Kevin talked privately with his dad. I didn't listen, didn't stand near. I walked the dorm area until I knew every concrete crack. When I returned, I saw Kevin on the steps, eyes red but mouth smiling. "Not everything's okay," he said before I could ask. "But he's still my dad, and I'm still me." He looked straight at me. "And I still love you." I sat beside him. In my heart, not victory, not defeat, but a strange maturity. Understanding that love isn't magic solving everything, but a refuge to truly face one's life. Spring opened room 203's window with fresh rain scent. We cleaned the room like a starting ritual, stuffing winter hoodies into boxes, retaping Kevin's band poster that had shifted, planting a small pot from a classmate with the warning, "Don't let it die." On the desk, 2 cold coffees and 2 future schedules not perfectly aligned, but side by side. The night before summer break, I sat writing the final line of a project, Kevin revising song lyrics. He looked up, half joking, half serious. "If someone asks what was special about room 203, what would you say?" I looked around the small room. Scratches on the desk, flickering bulb, familiar creaky chair, and Kevin. "I'd say," I replied, "it's where 2 guys learned not to apologize for who they are." Kevin nodded, eyes sparkling with laughter. Outside, cars droned in a long stream, night thin as letter paper. We turned off the lights, leaving a small bedside lamp casting warm glow on the ceiling. No long vows, no eternal contract. Just 2 young people knowing they'd touched something real. The secret of room 203, what once made us afraid, hide, tremble, now wasn't a secret in the sense of locking away. It became our story. A small room overlooking the university city sky, where 2 American guys found each other, loved, hurt, healed bit by bit, then dared to name what made their hearts beat strong. If someone moves in later, they might not know about us. But the walls have heard laughter, sighs, and confessions whispered softly. And somewhere, in the lingering air, there'll always be Kevin's song.